Alosha Pederson, welcome to Blue Collar Visionary.
Thank you, man. I'm super thrilled to be here.
I'm thrilled to have you, man. Can you just, as we start out here, give a little background? What is it you do? What's the company that you run?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I founded Endless Poxibilities in 2022. We are a residential concrete coating company. So our big three services are garages, basements, and patios.
Nice.
Okay. And they're top coat coatings that sit on top of the concrete for somebody that's not familiar with it. And the main purpose is just to protect, repair, and just make it look nice.
Cool.
Yeah.
For context, about how big is the company right now?
Sure. So we just finished out this past year at $2 million in revenue. We've got 14 team members. And then right now, like within this month, we're going for it. So next year, we're going to be adding 3 more trucks, and the goal is to go to 5 million.
Damn.
Yeah.
Let's go, bro.
Yes. It's exciting, extremely stressful. You know, there's so many things to figure out when you're moving that fast, right?
Yeah.
The nice thing is that every other challenge we've been able to conquer. So there's just, another thing we got to do and figure out. So
it's almost inevitable that it's going to happen. It's just a matter of how long is it going to be on your timeline?
Yeah.
How stressful is it going to be?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
but it's going to happen.
Yeah,
At
exactly.
least knowing you, that's my perspective. Hey man, well let's back up a little bit because so you run this company, and we met through a networking group. I always liked you, man. I liked your energy. I liked your mindset, and then I just had respect for you throughout. And but I know there's a story there that I'm not quite sure what it is, but I want to hear it. I want to take this time to learn and share with the world about who Alosha is and the foundation, man. Because there's a foundation there, and I think we could all be blessed by hearing about it.
Okay, so the origin story. All right, let's see. I'm trying to figure out a way to frame it, make it the timeline work here. So I guess we can just kind of start from the start.
Yeah.
So I was born in 1993 in Russia, okay? And I say 1993 because today I feel like there's some significance to it that I didn't put on it before. If anybody's familiar with what was going on in Europe during that time, the Soviet Union had just fell in 1991. And later on in my life, it kind of brought context to what happened. So in 1993, my 2 sisters and I, we grew up in what I would call almost like a village, right? The home that we grew up in, we didn't have running water, no electricity, no heat. It was straight up a third world country. There's no other way to describe it, right? But at that point, you didn't know what you didn't know, right? It's just the situation that we're in. About the time that I was 5 or 6, we were, I don't know what the right word is, discovered, found, reported, whatever it was. We were taken from our home and put in an orphanage. So at this point, it was me, my 2 sisters, and we had a brother. I think he was 6 months old at the time. So we go to the orphanage, and we were there for roughly a year or 2 years, okay? And again, there's some significance revolved around the time that we were there and everything that happened that I wasn't aware of at the time. But we were there for 2 years, and back here in the U.S., my now parents, Greg and Lorianne, they were attending a church in Rogers, Minnesota. And they were having this program where they would come over to Russia. They would grab a handful of kids. I don't know how people decided this stuff. And then they would sponsor them over here in the U.S. for the summer, okay? So my parents came over. They got us 3. They brought us to the U.S. They sponsored us for the summer, and then we got sent back.
Almost like an exchange program for this very short period of time, very young. Yeah. Interesting. Huh, okay.
And if you think about it, it's kind of comical. looking back at it now, it's like it was like a trial run. Like go over to the
Mm.
go over to Russia, like grab a couple kids and bring them home, try them out for summer, and so um, we did that. And
Do you remember? Do you remember your mindset as a kid when this happened? Were you like confused? Were you excited?
yeah, so there's kind of a funny story in that. So if you were selected to come over here, and some of the other kids weren't, what they would do is they would like create these like scary horror stories of like what the U.S. was and like what people did, right? So they were trying to like scare you before you went over there, right?
Hmm.
And one of the stories we were told is that the Americans would take kids over there and they would eat them. Okay, so like we're like these 6-year-old kids were just like panicked and just afraid of going over there, right? And so we come over here to the U.S. and we have this like crazy fear that we're gonna get eaten. And it just so happens at that time, my dad had cleaned a deer in the basement. Okay, so you have this like dark basement with like blood stains on the concrete because he just got done cleaning this deer. So now like everything's just like coming to fruition. So it's like, you know, they were just like bullying us for coming over here, right?
Yeah.
So there was some fear involved in that. But besides that, like we had a great summer. We came over here. We experienced things we've never experienced before. This country was just like completely foreign to us. It was for the most part a good experience. So we spent the summer over here. Then we got sent back. My parents originally had, you know, it was a mixed family originally. My mom was married before she had kids. My dad was married before he had kids. So they already had, they already had 4 kids. And their initial plan was just to go over there, you know, adopt one child. And long story short, they ended up adopting all 3 of us. So me and my 2 siblings, Ina and Nina. My younger brother at the time, he was an infant when we went to the orphanage, so he got sent off somewhere else. He got adopted to a different country. So they weren't able to keep us together in that sense. So they came back, they adopted us. We came to the U.S., I want to say in 2000 or 2001. I was 8 or 9 at the time. They put us in school. We had just about the best outcome that we possibly could. It was a great home, great family. We had everything that we could possibly needed. And, you know, and I'll share kind of like my journey from there on and what it kind of transpired. About the age of 12, I, you know, can't recall a single moment of when it happened, but there was this, you know, for lack of better words, like a switch that got flipped in me, right? Where I just became increasingly conscious of the things that had happened, you know, we'll say in Russia, and just began to like create these belief systems in my mind, right? Some of the belief systems that, you know, like this was wrong, you know, and now, you know, I'm a 12, 13 years old, and I'm looking back 5, 6 years, and about that time I started acting out, right? And it seemed like it happened overnight. And right about that time I started awakening this, you know, what went on to be a 15-year struggle with addiction. Okay, that kind of started at the age of 12. That was about the time I started drinking alcohol, smoking cigarettes, getting into, you know, some of the recreational drugs that people get into at that age. But my experience was very, very different. I knew something was wrong right from the start, right? And later on, you know, going through some of the, you know, the programs that I've gone through, I've been able to learn a little bit more about addiction and alcoholism, but I experienced that right from the start. It wasn't like something that developed over time. I knew that, you know, once I took anything, I just couldn't stop. So at the age of 12, I just became a terror, man. My poor family had to just endure awful things that I did to them. I acted out. I spent, a couple of years in in and out of group homes through my high school years. Um, just could not for the life of me figure it out, right? And in the back of my mind, I always I wanted, for lack of a better word, just do good. I just wanted to be good, right? But I just couldn't. I couldn't, right? And nobody could help me. Everybody that tried to help me just couldn't figure it out, right? And it just progressively kept getting worse and worse and worse. And then my senior year, I was in a group home right before I turned 18 with this great idea that I was going to go in the military, right? And it was just going to fix everything. And so that we set the plan. I was going to go in the military. I was going to, I was going to run off to the sunset. They were going to fix me. Everything's going to be good. So I enlisted in the Marine Corps. I turned 18. I flew out, the following week. I loved it. I loved everything about it. Went through boot camp. I was meritoriously promoted. They, take the top 3 or top 5 in the class. They promote them. Like, I did very, very well in that environment. In controlled environments, I always did very, very well. It's just the minute somebody turned their back and I was off on my own, that's when things got really, really bad. Right? So now I'm 18. I'm in San Diego, California, right? I have all these unresolved issues that they're still very, very active in me. And now I'm 18. I have money. I have liberty to go do the things that I wanted to do. And during that time, my addiction, my alcoholism progressively got worse. I was introduced to cocaine, which spiraled, maybe spiral a little bit faster. Yeah. Long story short, 2 years into it, I was asked very kindly to leave. It was an other than honorable discharge, and they just told me to get out. Just leave. Let's just call this a clean slate. Just stop this. So I got out, and that made things even worse. So at this time, I'm 20 years old, and again, things just keep getting worse and worse and worse. Throughout the next 5 years, I experienced addiction to meth, addiction to heroin, homelessness, in and out of jail. Having these type of habits, you can't really hold a job. These habits are incredibly expensive. They make you do things that you typically wouldn't, right? I was never the type of person that had fun during my time in addiction. It was always just, I was the guy cutting off your catalytic converter at 3 o'clock in the morning, for the next fix. Like, it was a terrible time, right? And throughout this entire time, it was just, the mindset was just, I was a victim. I was a victim of this world. Like, everything that happened to me was, it was against me, right? And then on September 17th, 2017, that was kind of the pivotal point in my life. We were, it was myself and somebody else at the time. I was on the run. We were sleeping inside of a car at a Cup Foods parking lot, and somebody had called in a wellness check. The way that we were laying inside the car, somebody was concerned that we had passed. So we get the knock on the window. Woken up. I had warrants. I didn't. And at this time, I was on my way to prison. And that was the night. That was the day that kind of set the trajectory for the rest of my life. I got picked up. I went in, and that particular night, on the 17th, I had what you'd call like a spiritual experience. Okay. And the way it all happened was, get to jail, and immediately I started getting anxious inside of there, right? So it's a very tiny cell. I know everything's about to happen. I just become increasingly anxious. the drugs that I was on at the time. I'm anticipating the sickness of it, the withdrawals, everything. Everything's just like collapsing on me, and I'm inside this tiny little room. And so I lay down in bed, and I just prayed. I just prayed over and over and over. Please just help me fall asleep. Fall asleep. Help me fall asleep. And then next morning I wake up, and I do it again. I just lay in bed and I just pray that I just, for 3-4 days straight, I sleep and I get through, the worst of it, the sickness of the withdrawals. And that for me was my like aha moment. That was my light bulb that something's out there. Somebody listened to me. Somebody was there for me. Somebody comforted me. That was my spiritual experience that really kind of set the tone for the rest of my time that I was going to spend in prison for that year. So I had that experience. I started serving my 1-year prison sentence. And during this time, I felt like this was my last chance. This was it. I couldn't keep doing this. If this didn't work, I mean, that was it, right? Like just years and years of this. I'm 25 years old. I just couldn't keep doing this. So I had the mindset of like, this is it. If I don't get it here, like I'm done, right? One way or another. So I put my head down. There's, when you're in these facilities, there's really two ways you can get through your time, right? You can take the time to focus on yourself, or you can take the time to get involved in everything else that's going on, right? And during this time, I did. Luckily I had parents that would buy me that TV, that wouldn't buy me all those, distractions, right? So I had nothing to distract myself. I went, worked my shift wherever I had to. I'd read books. I spent the time in the gym, this and that, and I just surrendered, for lack of better words. I surrendered. So we go through the whole year there.
Is prison as tough as people think, or as the movies portray?
Okay, great question. It's not. Like, sadly, it was, prison compared to jail, like, it was a great time in prison. I mean, you get a job, you go to the gym, you have no responsibilities, right? So, like, if I'm, thinking back on it, and, you look at all the people that go in and out of those places, like, I understand why. You know what I mean? They don't, you get so used to it. There's a community, everything is just orderly, where you need to be. It wasn't that bad, and I don't know if the right answer is to make it worse, or, find a way to make people spend their time better. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like that. And also I was in an extremely minimal security prison, right? A lot of the things that I did were light property crimes, stealing, and nothing was violent or anything. So, in that respect, it wasn't that bad. It was just a year that you had to do.
Yeah.
So, and at this point, throughout the time, I'm just doing the next right thing in front of me. Right, just doing the next right thing in front of me. I don't know where I'm going to go after I get out. I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, none of these, questions have been answered. And by the grace of God, like, my parents reached out. They said, they offered for me to move back inside the house versus going to a halfway house and stuff like that. And they've been down this road with me so many times, right? Helping me, and just always just getting burned, right? So, I'm extremely grateful for them, for reaching out their hand that time, giving this another try, because by all accounts, like, they had no reason to believe that this was going to be any different. They've done this, a dozen times, right? And they offer, to help me get on my feet once I get out. So now I have that figured out, right? I have somewhere safe to go. I have a fighting chance now. I do that time there. I get out, and at this point, I am literally doing what people are suggesting. one of the suggestions was, go to treatment. Went to treatment. That ended up being a 4-month process. Again, I'm laying out, I'm giving it up. Whatever people tell me to do, that's what I'm doing next, right? I'm trusting people at this point. Because before, nothing's ever, what I thought was the right thing never, transpired, right? And then at this point, I also get involved in, the 12-step program. And this time, I'm not going there to smoke cigarettes, meet girls, or, you know what I mean? Like this time, I'm there for the real deal.
It's not a social club this
It's
time.
not a social club this time, I get a sponsor. I start working the steps. And throughout that journey, when the steps, this is where, I had this kind of light bulb moment of, my entire life I've been living as just a victim, right? Poor me, everything happens, like it's just always, everybody did things to hurt me. I mean, right? My entire life has been like that. You write everything down on a piece of paper and you sit there and you look at it and it's like the realization that I was born in Russia. Okay. We were found taken to an orphanage. What are the odds of that? Okay. Being in the orphanage for 2 years and having the opportunity to be adopted. What are the odds of that? There are kids in there that spend 18 years in there and never have that opportunity. My 2 sisters and I got adopted, right? If you look at it, people don't typically adopt 2, 3 grown.
That's a handful right there.
Right. And we were grown, right? If you think about the people that are adopting kids, they're generally going for one child in, their infants, right? So the likelihood that all 3 of us, at the ages that we were to be adopted was very low, right? And then you think about, we got adopted to this particular family that had the patience, the love to just like keep trying, right? They stuck through a lot. I mean, these poor people, they thought they were going to go over there, they were going to help some like innocent children out, right? They were going to do a good thing in the world, and then they come over here and just, be terrorized. And, so you put all those things together. Like, what's the likelihood of all those things happening, right? Like, that's a miracle.
Damn.
Right?
You flipped it all.
That's a miracle.
Yeah.
And then, for me to go on and experience all the things that I experienced, and having the opportunity to get sober, like, what are the chances of people getting sober from the things that I did, right? What are the chances of getting out of that lifestyle and having, people and support to help me get out of that, right? So I went from, this idea that, like, I'm this huge victim to just, like, I am literally the luckiest person in the world.
It's amazing.
Right? Yeah. And so, transitioning from that, it's just a simple idea, just this frame of mind, right? That's all it was, just from victim to just the luckiest person in the world, right? And, it's kind of comical, too, like, tens of thousands of dollars that were spent on like these professionals, the countless therapy sessions, like all these different ideas, and all it took was a book that was written 100 years ago, right? To just sit down and do the work that was laid out there, right? Literally just write it down on a piece of paper. That's all that it took, right?
What book?
The big book, AA's book.
Oh, got you.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And so that happened. Right. And, from there on, it wasn't just like, my life was just like perfect, everything was great. I still had to work through a lot of, the ways that I thought, the way that I acted, the way that I talked. Some of those things still need to be developed. But at least I had a starting point. Right. So now I have this new way of looking at life, and, that really kind of set the tone for everything else that kind of followed, right? So shortly after that, I would say, the next chapter of my life in miracles kind of happened, right? So, okay, let me try to figure out a way to frame this. Okay, so now I've developed this or found a new frame of mind to work off of, right? During that time that I was in prison, I'd spent a lot of time spent a lot of time dreaming, right? I mean, what else you got to do majority of the time? But you would sit there and you lay there and I kind of created this idea of a life, right? Like this dream life that I wanted, right? And it was, to me, it was so outrageous, right? It'd be similar to you dreaming about becoming a baseball player. In my mind, this perfect dream of mine was to be sober, to just work a job, have somewhere to be every morning, to be in a healthy relationship, and just to have a place of my own, right? Have a place that I can go to feel safe. That was the biggest dream that I've ever had, right? Because I've never had that before. Not once did it seem feasible that something like this would happen to me, right? So I sat there and I just dreamt over and over, right? I had this picture, perfect, clear idea of what that was going to look like, right? So we get out, and again, I go through that phase in treatment, and this is where everything kind of comes together, right? The job that I got was, this is an important part of the story too, was CDI in Elk River.
Trucking company?
No, CDI was, they manufactured curb adapters.
Okay.
So manufacturing place.
Gotcha.
Cutting metal, folding metal, welding. I get this job, and by all accounts, I didn't, by all accounts, I shouldn't have, I guess, right? I've no experience. I have a questionable background. My mom is driving me to the interview. They give me the job.
Wow.
Okay. At that point, they didn't really have a specific position for me. I think they literally kind of made one up just to kind of put me on the floor just to see if I'd, show up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get this job, and I show up, and I'm assigned to literally sit in this corner and just cut sheet metal. Just take scrap pieces of metal and just cut it down, right? And I show up every single day for months on end, working like I owed them something, right? Every single day. Because at that point I did, right? About 2 months into it, somebody had walked by and almost noticed me, right? And they, his name was Terry. And he'd mentioned something to somebody out there that says, hey, this guy's showing up every single day. He's just standing in this corner for 10, 12 hours. We need to get him out of there, into a different position. After that, hold on. I'm trying to figure out a way to transition. Are we transitioning correctly here?
I mean, I feel like you're on a thread here, man. You developing work ethic, you got systems. Take us, I guess just what happens next, man. I literally just want to know what happens next.
Okay. Okay, so I'll start at the top. Okay.
You got noticed. What
Okay.
happens after you get noticed?
Yeah. So I'm showing up every single day for months on end, just cutting sheet metal in the back, right? It's not a sexy job, but I'm just happy to be there, right? I mean, this is part of my vision. This is part of my dream. It's coming true, right? I have somewhere to be. I can work 10, 12 hours a day. And finally somebody had noticed me, right? Terry walked back one of these days, said, hey, this guy's back here cutting metal every single day for the last 2 months. We got to get him out.
Mm-hmm.
Got to get him doing something. And they got me out and they put me in the front end of the entire production floor, right? So in this area, we're cutting metal with CNCs, we're folding metal, stuff like that. Lots of machines, lots of computers. And I'm fascinated by all of it, right? I just want to learn anything and everything. So I spent the next couple of months learning everything in that department. From there on, I wanted to learn how to weld. They gave me an opportunity to weld. And then I got a leadership position. This is a year into it. I get a leadership position in the front end. And within 2 years, I'd made the production supervisor, right? So that experience of coming into a place, having opportunities, and literally just taking them, right? Anything and everything that I wanted to learn, there was opportunities, right? I was able to advance. I was able to grow as a person. I was able to learn new things. Like that was an incredible experience for me. So working here at CDI.
Let me ask you one quick thing here. Like, are you battling with past thinking patterns and behaviors? You're sober right now. You're working the system. I imagine there's some, deep ruts that have been laid, though, for the previous decade or so. Like, was it a challenge? Was there a daily practice? Like, how did you keep yourself from, the evil coming back?
Yeah. Great question. And a lot of that still happened, on the day-to-day basis. A lot of this still happened. And, if you look at, like an addict and some of the behaviors that they portray, it's fear, selfishness, so some of those things like crept up on a day-to-day basis, right? I worked so hard, right, in fear of that, I might not get this promotion, or I might be let go, or I'm in a position that I need to get something done, and I was just like overwhelming fear that if I don't, I'm going to disappoint somebody, right? Selfish in the sense that like I prioritized, goals of the production over, other people's well-beings. You know what I mean? Some of the ways I interacted with people, you got 30, 40 people in here. So those things still came up, right? And throughout this time too, I met my now-to-be wife, Taylor, right? So Taylor and I started dating too, and there was a lot of things that her and I needed to work out, right? So by all accounts, we'll just say she's like a normal person, right? And, here I am with, some of the baggage, some of the behavior, some of the thought patterns too, like within our relationship, that stuff had to creep up. And luckily she's like a strong enough person to have been able to navigate some of those things, right? There's things that happen and she's like, what is going on right now? Like, stop. Like, we have to sit down. We have to talk about this, right? And I can't imagine anybody else being able to recognize that, like, hey, this isn't you.
Right.
Something's happening here.
Yep.
Like, let's sit down. Somebody else might have been like, this is too much work. I'm not dealing with this, right? So I was very, very fortunate to find and meet Taylor. She's a super strong woman, like, and she helped me, through a lot of navigating that, in early stages. And then, there was still the relationship factor with my parents, right? A lot of our patterns of relationships in the past started creeping up too, right? So we had to navigate that, on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, a lot of my behaviors and patterns from early on still, crept up, during this period.
But it was like a stock market where it's trending in the right direction.
It was
day to day, it's a little volatile, but
yeah,
you're trending.
Yeah.
I want to acknowledge something that that I think it's a lesson for me. It seems like the day to day, the diligence that you portrayed or practiced, as well as the patience. Whereas like you're cutting scrap sheet metal, 2 months in the grand scheme of things, not that long. Day to day, I bet that felt like an eternity. Where I don't know, maybe I'm making an assumption, but like that's pretty monotonous work. But you stayed the course. You got noticed, and you're saying in 2 years you went from basically a favor was done for you to get you hired to you're running your production supervisor. I mean, that's just like, it's like slow, but slow and steady. And then you have these like quantum leaps.
Yeah.
Slow and steady leap.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lesson for me. And I think that could be a lesson for a lot of people out there, but okay. What's the inflection point? Okay, so you're kind of living your dream here. You're you got your production supervisor. You got Taylor, who's a rock, a strong woman that can handle, um, you know, when things get rough with you and you're fighting through things. Um, let's go to when you make that shift to, unless I'm skipping over anything massive here. You stop me if I'm skipping something that's meaningful. But like, how do you go production supervisor to Endless Poxibilities?
Yeah. Okay. So, one thing that I guess is part of the story that I guess I need to acknowledge, right? Because that kind of sets the pace for the vision and the goal for Endless.
Yeah.
So throughout this time, I'm at CDI, and again, yep, like you mentioned, like my dream's complete. Like this is it. Like my wildest dreams in the world are complete. We have a home. I have this fantastic job that I love. I'm challenged every day. I'm learning. Taylor and I are, we have this amazing relationship. Things couldn't get any better, like at all. And that particular summer, I picked up a hobby, dirt biking, and it was like an August day. It was a beautiful day outside. I decided to load up the dirt bike, and I was going to go up north and go riding by myself. And on my way up there, I stop at a gas station, Speedway here. I'm filling up. I walk inside the gas station, and again, just the day couldn't be any more perfect at this point. I walk inside the gas station. I just have this like weird thought is that I could afford anything in this gas station right now. Like I literally have a debit card full of money that I could buy anything in this, right? I'm not walking in here to steal a hot dog or, some water. Like, so this just like overwhelming feeling, just like gratitude, like things are just amazing right now, right? So I get back in the truck and I'm driving. I got a couple hour drive. And then as I'm kind of thinking about this more and more, this thought goes into just like, it goes from gratitude to almost like shame, right? And the idea that why did I have to do all the things that I did? Why did I have to experience all the things that I experienced? Why did I have to hurt people? Why did I have to experience those 12 years of just like absolute agonizing pain? Like, why, right? Because, you think about it, it's like one day I just woke up and decided I'm not going to do that anymore. It's like, why did it take me 12 years to do that? Why is life so good now and I had to experience all those things? And, I'm sitting here thinking about it, and it's just like a very, very conscious time during this drive. And this idea pops up in my head that like, I had to go through those things for a reason. What's that reason, right? And ultimately, it formed into this idea like, I had to experience all those experiences. I had to get sober. I had to go through this like transformation, this like growth as a person to ultimately go back and help people, right? So that's like, that's this idea that I have in my head. Like, I need to do all the things that I'm doing. I'm very blessed and fortunate right now, and I need to take this opportunity, build on that so I can go back and help people. And so this idea is kind of floating around in the back of my mind. And I'm like energized by it. I'm excited by it. I go back home. I tell Taylor, like, I think I really need to do this, and I'm kind of formulating a way that it would look. And I decide that it's going to be through real estate, right? At this point, it's like, all right, I need to figure out how to invest in real estate. That's how I'm going to build what I need to build in order to retire by 40. That was the vision. That was the goal. I need to retire by 40 so I can spend the rest of my life dedicating to this calling, for lack of better words. And at this point, I couldn't imagine leaving CDI. I mean, it was the greatest company. The amount of things that they taught me, the opportunities that I had there, I just could not for the life of me imagine me ever leaving CDI. So it's like, all right, well, how do I create this wealth to be able to afford to be able to do something like this? Real estate. So I started digging into real estate. I listened to podcasts, listened to books. And then COVID happened. Okay. So COVID happened. There was a lot of uncertainty of, are we going to have a job? Are we going to keep working? And during that time, I saw these small opportunities on these community pages on Facebook. Somebody's like, hey, I need the small tree cut down. I need the stump ground. I need these rocks, just all these small little, how people go on there.
100%.
Yeah. And so here I am thinking I'm going to lose my job. And I see these things on Facebook. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to supplement. If we do end up shutting down, I'm going to supplement it with this, right? And so I started picking up little jobs. I started advertising on there for like stump grinding, right? And looking back at it, I'd go rent a stump grinder for like $300. I'd spend, $20 on cigarettes, $20 on monsters, go out, work all day long, and I'd make $300, right? So by the end of the day, like I'd lost $50, right? Just like, but I loved it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I absolutely,
something there.
Yeah, I loved it, right? And then, I picked up this big landscaping job. Again, I have no idea. I have no business doing any of these things, right? I pick up this landscaping job that I, hindsight probably shouldn't have, right? To remove all this rock. I don't have any equipment. It's all by hand. And then CDI apparently stays open. And so I'm still working a full job here. And then at night, I'm like going over there shoveling rocks. And this project took me like a month. It just like kicked my butt. It was like the worst thing that I've ever agreed to, right? It made no money on it. Just spent countless hours out there. But I loved it. I enjoyed it, right? It was mine.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't care if I was making money or not. I was losing money, and I was out there just working my ass off. So I really, really enjoyed that. And then of course, everybody remembers what happened during COVID, the interest rates fell so low, okay? So during that time, a lot of these, we were building rooftop curb adapters. Everybody was taking advantage of the low interest rates. Everybody was borrowing money to do all these big projects. The business at CDI nearly doubled.
Wow.
But we lost half the employees,
right?
So now I'm in this supervisor role, and for a year straight, it was 60, 70 hours a week, year straight. And just for the life of us, we couldn't get caught up. The pressure of all that for a year straight, I couldn't do it anymore.
What happened to the employees? Why did you lose half?
Well, we had a lot of government assistance money at the time. You combine, people being paid stay at home to, there was just a labor shortage period everywhere. I mean, you couldn't find people to work anywhere, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so it was just.
Yeah, but it just was what. Okay, gotcha.
It was the perfect storm.
So you did that for like 2 or 3 years, you said?
A year.
A year.
Yeah.
Okay. 70 hour weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll burn you out.
I just, I lost my passion. I showed up. I was just, I was paralyzed by the whole thing. And I made a decision. I said, there's no coming back from this. I can't keep doing this, right? So this was about December that I kind of, hit that wall, made a decision. I was going to leave. During this time, I was looking at going to school. I was looking at other jobs. Nothing bit, right? There was nothing out there that I was like, this is it. And the whole idea behind Endless, looking back at it now, it was insane. It was, I think it was like January 2nd or January 1st. I was laying on the couch, scrolling Facebook. A old friend of mine from the Marine Corps, he was down in Texas. He'd been doing these floor coatings for the last 5 years. At this point, I've never seen a garage floor coating in my life. I've known nothing about it, zero, right? But I see his Facebook page. I click on it, and I start scrolling, and I just get obsessed. I mean, I had a lot of ideas before. I'd get obsessed about a lot of things, and, usually 5 minutes later, they're gone. Mm-hmm. This is 2-3 days later, and I still can't get it out of my head. Just absolute obsession over it. So see the Facebook page. A couple days later, I'm still just like, I can't let it go. And it was a day or two later that I made the decision that I'm just going to do this. I went up to Taylor and said, hey, you know, I'm going to do this, right? Timing, it probably wasn't the best. You know, we just bought a house. You know, she was working, you know, a good job. But we did. We bought a house, and this just happened so fast and out of nowhere. She was taken a little back by it, but she was like, you know, incredibly supportive. You know, you could look at her face and go, okay, she's worried about this, but at least she didn't say anything, right? She supported the idea. She's like, okay, all right, I'll go with it. So I go and put in my notice, and I asked them to work half days for the next 4 months while I get this set up. And the next phone call that I made was, you know, he was like the smartest person that I knew, Nick Lysdell. He worked at CDI. He went and got his master's, went on to tenant, a lot of business schooling, and that was the next phone call that, you know, I'm very grateful to this day, right? Because had I called him and he said, no, this is a dumb idea, don't do it, like I wouldn't have done it, right? At this point, it's just all a super fresh idea, and I call him, I said, hey, you know, this is what I'm thinking about doing. He goes, great idea, like, I'd love to help you. I was like, okay, like now we have to do it, right? And starting it was kind of you know, looking back on it, the best way to describe it is everything just fell into place perfectly. The way things needed to happen, they happened. The people that needed to be available were there for me, right? It was just insane. I went online, Googled how to start a business. You know, there's like a list of things you need to do. You need to get financing, get a name, find a product, get insurance. And so this whole journey starts, right? Taylor comes up with the name Endless Poxibilities. We were driving down 94, and I said, hey, we need a name for this. You know, a minute later, she's like, Endless Poxibilities. Like, I love it. That's perfect. We're going to go with it, right? And then, you know, from there on, it was like, all right, well, we need to find a product. Like, we need to learn how to do this stuff, right? And again, just all the right people came into place. The banker, the one big person at this time was a gentleman named Peter Johnson. He owns Valence Coatings here in Minnesota. You know, the guy answered my Facebook message at like 9 o'clock at night. Met him, you know, 3 days later. Like, that was the perfect company to get started with. They were a huge resource. And I tapped into the two people that I knew at the time to help me start this. Noah Foy, he was a friend of mine growing up. And then Micah Howard, Taylor's friend. And again, right people, right time. Like, I don't know if this would have been successful without them, right? And so the plan was to get started April 1st of 2022, and we barely got to that timeline. We bought all the equipment we needed, got the products figured out, got some training, and I just went back to the community pages like I did before. Started posting all over these community pages. We got a couple of jobs here and there. And then I guess I'd like to just kind of back up to before we started this, I am a huge firm believer in just like goals, right? You write things down on a piece of paper and you do them. That's it, right? It's not, I hope this gets done. Like, just write it down on a piece of paper and do it, right? And our goals for the year were $250,000 in revenue, 100 jobs, and I wanted to network. I wanted to meet other business owners, right? And I think this is super, super important to kind of drive this point of like goals home. I went and, Jenny Giese, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I went to her, this is in March. I went into her shop to get yard signs made, okay? And her and I were sitting there chatting a little bit. We hadn't even started, the actual business yet. And she'd mentioned, hey, I'm part of this like networking group. We meet every single Wednesday. It's like 100-member group. Like, you pay some money, you become a member. If networking wasn't on my goal, if networking wasn't written down and I heard, hey, go stand in front of 100 people that are business owners, pay money to be part of this, show up every single Wednesday because you have to, here's all the things that you have to do. If networking wasn't on my list, like, I'd be like, no, you know what I mean?
Right.
I don't have any money, I don't have any time, and you're not going to get me to stand up in front of 100 people, right? But because networking wasn't on that list, it was a trigger, like, boom, this is the opportunity, you have to take it, right? How many people do you talk to on a day-to-day basis? You're like, this is it, you have to be a part of this. And they're like, I don't have the time, I don't have this. Right. You know what I mean? They make all these excuses, but like, it was on the piece of paper, so I took that opportunity, and that changed my life. Just being in that group changed my life. So yeah, that first year, man, we scrapped it together. It was amazing. We did $400,000 in revenue. We hit our 100 job mark. It was messy, but we got it done, right? And towards the end of the season, we had done a job for this gentleman too, Matt Feehan. This was like a big transition, big pivotal point into the coming years. You start this business, you have no idea what you're doing. It's just, you do the next thing. It's exciting. It's wild. I mean, it's like a rush, right? But at some point it becomes like really, really chaotic and not fun anymore. And about that time, I think it was like November, September, it started not being fun, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, to the point of like, I'm sitting in the truck, like tears coming down my face. Like, what did I do? Like, this is not what I had in mind. This is miserable. I don't want to do this anymore. Everything's kind of falling apart at this point. And luckily it happened like 5 or 6 months into it. Like, things became unmanageable 5 or 6 months into it. There's business owners that are like, they have that threshold. They have that patience to just like live in chaos.
They do it for years.
For years. And I'm 5 months into it. And I'm like, this is not good. I don't like it. Like, I'm about to tap out here.
Are you making money?
No. That's the worst of it too. Like, you're working all these hours, all the stress, you're not even making money, right? And, even back then, if you'd asked me if I was making money, I wouldn't have even known. I just know that money's going in the account, money's going out of the account, right? And we do this, at this point, it's like the biggest job we've done. It's a system we've never done before for Matt Feehan. This project, things are going wrong on it. Material is not there. All these issues arise from it. We get done. And Matt Feehan pulls me aside. He goes, hey, the floor is great. I love the floor. But the experience of working with you guys was probably one of the worst experiences I've had. You guys did this. And he just laid out all the things that we did wrong, right? And I'm super grateful for him for having the courage to just like pull somebody aside and have a man-to-man conversation of like, you guys suck, right?
That's tough love.
That's tough.
That's out of love though. It is love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many other, like, I'm the same way, dude. I've got my car detailed before, and it's like, what is this? But I don't say anything. I don't know. I'm just like too scared to say something.
That's so funny. I was having a conversation with my wife this past weekend. We hit this restaurant, and it was a bad experience.
Yeah.
And I'm like, do I leave a review? Do I say something, or do I just never go back? And I'm just not gonna ever go back. I was like, I don't want to hurt that business with leaving a 1-star review, because that's what it was. It was a 1-star experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, okay. Yeah, we all fight that tension.
Yeah. Like, are you helping somebody or not? And if you give them that 1-star review, what kind of person are they? How are they going to receive that?
Yeah.
Are they going to do anything about it? And luckily, Matt, he's a very customer-driven, focused person, right? So like, he's very hyper sensitive to this stuff. So he laid all this stuff out, and I straight up told him, all right, I appreciate the feedback, and I laid it all out there. I'm like, hey man, everything's falling apart, yada yada yada. I open up to him about what's going on, and he says, all right, here's what you need to do. You need to go home and read the E-Myth. Right there and then, I downloaded it on Audible. I started listening to it, and it's like, oh my, okay, this is going to change my life, right? I instantly knew that this was it. This was my answer. That same weekend, I rented a cabin up north, listened to the book. I drove up north all by myself, spent 2 days up there, and I wrote out systems and processes, right? Like, it clicked in my mind. It doesn't have to be like this, right? Because our goal too for the following year was to, add another truck to the production. And it's like, I can't even, do it with one. Like, how are we going to do two? You know what I mean? Like, it's on a piece of paper. We have to do it. And I'm just like nervous about it. But then, you read that book and you get up there and you just write everything out. And that like changed my life, just that simple, right? And, the first time you do it, it wasn't like anything like extraordinary. It was just like how to load the truck, like what time to show up, just get everything on a piece of paper and just systematize it, right? Going from the Wild West of just doing whatever to like just do it this way, right?
Yeah.
So that was a very, very pivotal point in my life. It didn't fix the issue. It gave us a starting point, right? And, it's something that, we're working on a day-to-day basis, right? As problems are, arise, is it a pattern? We're tackling that. And these systems are getting a little bit, they're getting way more robust, easier to follow, stuff like that. It certainly isn't it hasn't solved everything, right? But at least now we have a baseline to work off of. Okay, so feeling energized about that. I feel better. I'm ready to tackle next year, to just move forward. I feel good now, right? And then that January, so we go through the whole first year. We hit our goals. Everybody's feeling good. That January, we went to a convention called World of Concrete. It's just, it was out in Vegas. It's this 2-3 day event out there, everything concrete related. We go out there as a team, and I had signed up to attend a seminar during this time. It was a marketing company that was kind of putting on the seminar, and that was actually my first introduction to Chuck Tokey and some of these other people in the space. But one person in that seminar went on to, again, change my life and set a different trajectory for, essentially the trajectory that we're on right now, right? It was that particular event. During lunch, they had a lunch panel. Okay, and so they brought up 4 or 5 guys up there. They were kind of talking about the industry and what's going on. There was a gentleman at that event. His name was Geer. Didn't know who he was prior to this. I wasn't keen on what was going on in the industry. But you could immediately tell that Geer was somebody, right? He had like this little posse around him. He's just this like, this cool dude in the room, right? You could instantly tell that, all right, this guy's a somebody, but I had no idea who he was. And so he gets up on the stage there, and he introduces himself. And before I guess I could get into this portion of the story, our vision for Endless Poxibilities was always going to be this larger company, right? I was passionate about building a larger company because of the opportunities that I had at CDI, right? CDI was a large company. I came in there, and I had this opportunity to just take what I wanted, right? To go anywhere that I wanted, right? So I'm like passionate about building this big company. I even like research companies around our area. There's one particular company where in their website you could go and see, the team, right? And there was just like huge org chart of all these people. I'm just like, okay, that's what I want.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so had this vision of like building this big company, but to me, I had no idea what a big company was, right? So like in my head, it was like, if we hit $5 million in revenue, like that's a big company. It'll be able to support, like the people that helped me start it. They'll have these opportunities to grow and this and that. And so like 5 million is like the magic number in my head, right? And then Jeff Geer gets on stage and he introduces himself, starts sharing what he's done. And he's talking about how he, the first year they started in 2017, the first year they did like 2 or 3 million. The second year they did like 10 million. The third year they did like 20 million. And, these numbers are just getting bigger. They're just like outrageous. Yeah. And I remember having this like, dude, my stomach just like clenched. I almost got sick sitting there thinking about it. Because I'm looking back at that last year and how hard we had to work to get to 400,000, and he's doing these like huge numbers, and it's like, how is that even possible, right? And it really shook me up. This idea that like I would never be able to do that. I'm sitting there thinking I will never be able to do that. That is just insane. Like, how did he do that, right? And I was obsessed with figuring out how he did that. And that lasted probably for a week or two of me just like in shock, right? After that experience, though, it turned into this idea of like the 4-minute mile. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if the 4-minute mile, yeah, if he can do it, that means it's possible. Like, I don't have to like it's possible. What he's doing is possible. You just got to figure out what he's doing. And so that changed my outlook and I guess the end goal for Endless. Like, all right, so this is a real life opportunity out there. Like, we're gonna do the same thing, right? Maybe not the same thing, but like it's gonna be a lot bigger than we initially thought, right? So I was energized by that, right? And for me, like, once I learned that that's possible, I started thinking a lot bigger, right? So I have this idea, I'm thinking a lot bigger, and at this point I started consuming the content of Jeff Geer, your Tommy Mellows, your Ken Goodrich, all these people that are just running these $100 million companies, right? You start consuming this content on a day-to-day basis. It's not some like crazy idea anymore, right?
Yeah.
Like, people are doing it, right? So that was a huge moment for me. And after that, I probably bugged him for like a whole year. Jeff. I found him on Facebook and I bugged him for a whole year of like getting out there and meeting him. And finally, we were talking about a little bit about this earlier. He's like, yeah, I have some time in December. Come down here. We'll meet.
Where's he at? Texas or
Illinois?
Illinois. Okay.
Illinois. So I'm just like super amped to go down there. And then the timing couldn't have been worse. Like, there was a death. Somebody close to me, so now I have this like, what do I do here? Do I miss a funeral? Go whatever. So that was all figured out. I had the opportunity to go down there and meet him, and super nice guy. He opened his doors for a whole day, and through that experience, I learned what I was missing, or we'll say a puzzle piece of what we were missing, right? So far, that first year was all production, right? It was just figuring out production, figuring out systems. The time that I spent with him, I figured out that sales is a process. Sales is a system. Sales is a thing you need to learn. It's not a thing you just go and do however you want to do it. So I came back armed with that knowledge of like, hey, I need to create a sales system. And that was about the time I was introduced to Chuck Toki, went to his event, read books, kind of deep dived into the sales portion of it. And then I guess another huge pivotal thing that happened that year was, we mentioned a little bit earlier, the money portion of it. We had set, we're in our second year, we had set this big goal of crossing that $1 million in revenue. And I don't know what it was. It's just like one of those things. It's like you have to cross it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wrote it down on a piece of paper, and again, it was one of those things that like I would die over this. Like we need to cross that line, at all costs. And that was a challenge. It almost broke the whole company, doing that. I got a crash course into being financially literate, learning how to read P&Ls, this and that. We had a scare halfway through the summer of potential like bankruptcy.
Mm-hmm.
There was.
What year is this?
So this is our second year.
Okay.
This is our second year. Just really, really focusing on the top line. Just we have to get to this number. Not looking at anything else. Not focusing on anything else. Everybody's working 70, 80 hours a week. People are getting burnt out. Projects are going sideways. And in July, right during the busy season, there was 1 week where I wasn't about to make payroll. Right? I mean, everybody's working so damn hard every single week, and we're not able to make payroll that week, right? And so that was like the scary moment of like how fragile things are and how I need to learn these numbers and make sure that we're doing the things we should be doing and not doing things we shouldn't be doing. So I had a crash course in financials that year, and then a crash course in learning how to sell, right? And then
let me pause you real quick. I hear this story so often about the payroll nightmare. It's like I didn't have enough. What do you do? Do you go get a line of credit, or like how do you solve that problem?
Yeah. And we solved that problem with the line of credit.
Okay.
Somebody at one point in time told me that you need to make sure you ask for money when you don't need it.
Yeah.
Because if you ask for it when you do need it, you're not going to get it.
Yeah.
So luckily, like we had that established.
That's a little insurance policy.
Yeah.
For the owners out there, you should probably go get it, because if you don't need it right now, just go get it. What's like $500 a year or something, or like to service that, or is there any cost to it?
I guess I'm not really sure.
Okay.
I know if you use it, you get charged. But yeah, like that was a huge valuable lesson for me. Don't ask for money when you need it. Make sure you get it when you don't.
Yeah.
Right. And so luckily that was one piece of advice I listened to from somebody. So we're able to get through that.
That is a symptom, though. It's like, that could turn into a slippery slope where you use this money to band-aid things over, but if you don't fix the core issue, that's a problem. I have a feeling this was a wake-up call for you.
This was a huge wake-up call, right? Because being able to learn a P&L too, like that's, I mean, you have to sit down and learn how to do those things. And I'd been working with a coach. I started working with a coach right about this time too, and he was a huge help navigating through that, right? That's another thing that, like, work with a coach. Mm-hmm. I mean, these people are incredible. They're there for a reason, right? They're the soundboards, the people that will calm me down, and he was that for me, right? So we were able to get through that year. We hit our 1 million goal, and it was rough. It was not pretty. It was rough. We had set another goal to add to production again, right? The following year. So, that.
What was the profit margin, or like what was take home on that?
Great question. Awful. 6%. So we hit that million at what cost? I mean, if you think about that 6% net profit.
60,000?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's profit to the company?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And, my understanding is like anything less than 10%, I mean, you're like one bad problem away from going under, right? And anything less than that. So that 1 million, crossing that 1 million, like looking back on it, was it worth it? No.
That's a lot of work for $60,000.
Yeah. Right.
How many jobs was that? What was the average ticket?
Oh, so our average ticket that year, I think it was like 3,800.
Okay. So I can't do that math off the top, but that's a lot of jobs.
It's a lot of jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it put a lot of strain on a lot of people, unnecessary strain too. And then, you know, honestly, if you were to have like a professional sit down and look for it, it was probably less than that, right? Because like I wasn't paying myself anything, right? So like if we were to do it correctly and I was actually paying myself something, we probably would have lost money that year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If we're being like
100%.
completely honest, yeah.
Yeah, because you should, on $1 million revenue, you should be earning at least a $60,000 salary.
Yeah. So if you took that payout, like we didn't make any money that year, right? And it was just like the worst year of our lives. Like it was so hard. Like it was so painful. Just to what, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Cross that goal. But on the flip side of it too, it's like I'm a goal-driven person.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we had to cross that. We had to learn those lessons. You know, it happened the way it needed to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was a tough year. And then heading into this past year, we were able to tighten a lot of things down. We did add to production. We found some efficiencies, you know, just for, I guess, reference. We were at 2 trucks, and I mean, it was painful to get to that million, right? We added a 3rd truck, and we were able to double revenue, right? So that's how many inefficiencies we had. That by adding 1 truck to the 2, we were able to double our revenue, right? So lots of lessons learned during that year.
I don't quite understand that. So the inefficiencies were in production, or like, what were the inefficiencies by, like, what did adding another truck solve?
Yeah, so the inefficiencies, so if like we'll do the math on it. So 2 trucks to do say $1 million in revenue would have equaled out to $500,000 a truck. And then we added a 3rd truck and we doubled our revenue, right? So if you take 3 trucks divided by 22.1, you know, you're looking at, what is that? 700, right? So we're able to get that much output per truck by saying no to jobs we had no business doing, getting better at following our processes, getting better at following our systems, figuring out how to sell, right? We created a selling process where we're able to actually sell what we're worth. So that's what the inefficiencies were. And, you know, next year they're going to get better, right? You know, instead of 700, we're going to go shoot for 750. You know what I mean? So there's still a lot of opportunities there. So yeah. And then if we're just kind of following the timeline.
Well, so are you doing, like right now, do you feel like your numbers are solid? You're happy with profit margin? Basically adding that 3rd truck, did that solve a lot of the problems with having 6% profit margin?
It didn't. Well, I suppose, you know, we finished out the year with a 10% net profit this year. Okay. So we hit kind of the mark where we needed to be, you know, that's as low as we could, you know, possibly be. We hit that number. And then it's also I had to go through the decision of like, are we growing revenue, or are we growing profit, right? Right now we're in the season of just growing revenue, growing market share, growing. So Tommy Mello talks about this all the time, this idea that you can't bulk and cut at the same time. You have to pick one or the other, right? So if we're bulking right now, we're going to sacrifice a lot of the profits, a lot of everything else. You know, we're focused on revenue right now.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I suppose, you know, a lot of people could argue that you could do both at the same time. I'm not sophisticated enough to be able to do that. You know, I set our targets and just hope to God we can get there. You know what I mean? And just follow it closely enough to make sure we're still staying on track.
Are you paying yourself a salary now?
No.
Okay.
We're getting there. We're getting there. You know, that's also another like a very like controversial topic. Of, you know, there's the school of thought that if you're not paying yourself the appropriate salary, you're like, you know, essentially fudging the books. And then there's the other school of thought that like you don't need a salary, just keep growing your business until the
And you
end of
just
it.
take distributions, or you?
Oh,
Because you got to live still. I mean, you
yeah,
pay a
yeah,
mortgage.
yeah. No, let me back up. What I mean by paying a salary, I pay myself a salary literally just to pay the bills.
Okay.
Y-
All
y-
right. So I mean, yeah, that counts. It's not
yeah,
like you're getting. Yeah, I got you.
not
Okay.
not zero, just not the we'll call it appropriate salary, right?
Understood.
If I had to hire somebody to do my role,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not getting paid.
Okay, you're not market rate. You're paying yourself
Yeah,
something. It's
yeah,
not
yeah.
market rate.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Taylor and I, my wife now. I mean, we live we do everything that we want to do. We travel. We go out to eat, but we don't have a very lavish lifestyle.
Yeah.
I drive a 20-year-old car with
Yeah.
250,000 miles on it. Like I don't need anything. You know what I mean?
Dude,
Like,
thanks for being vulnerable on this and honest. Like I think somebody. This is eye opening.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, you're doing $2 million in revenue. It sounds like the neighbor next door, someone that doesn't know better, might think you're living high on the hog. That's not how it works.
yeah.
It's like, no,
Yeah.
dude, yeah, okay.
I have
Thank you.
I have a $1,500 car and I love it, dude.
Yeah.
It starts, it drives, it's
Yeah.
comfortable. Even some of the guys are like, "When are you gonna?" I don't need a truck. I don't need anything. I wear Crocs everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I wear company T-shirts. Like I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
I have more than I've ever needed.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And I love that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's that could, if somebody was looking at our financials, they could say that we wouldn't have a true net 10% profit if I was paying myself, right? But I'm more concerned over just growing the company right now than I am anything else.
Nice.
And so, that experience with Jeff Geer and some of the things that he's done, that set us on the trajectory that we're on now, right?
Man, shout out Jeff Geer for opening up the doors to a competitor, right?
He is now. Yeah. So, I mean, you look at TSR. He's part of a private equity group now, but I mean, they're going to be doing $200 million this year.
Damn.
One of their companies is in our backyard now. So that, that's fun, man.
It's fun, and it's an abundance mindset where it's like, there's enough for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's, that's a great point too. Like, I feel like at the time that we started Endless Poxibilities, everybody caught on to the idea that like this was the why, everybody thought this was the gold, right? So we have so much competition now that we didn't.
Oh, really?
Right about the time that I started, it seemed like everybody else started too, right? Which inherently is good. It really is, right? If you have a lot of competition, that means you need to get better every single day. You always need to be getting better, right?
Yeah.
Your customer experience needs to get better. Your product needs, everything it forces you to be better. If you're the only one in that town and the buck stopped with you, like, you don't need to change anything. People are going to come to you regardless. But if I have to compete against 20 or 30 people, like, all right, it's a race. Let's go.
And I mean, from a marketing standpoint, more people are now seeing, oh, this is a cool garage floor. What is this? And now they're being educated by their friends and neighbors. And I mean, it ideally grows demand too in the area.
Absolutely. 100%. Like, you're absolutely right in that. So, everybody else spending money on Facebook and Google is inherently driving that awareness, that demand. It's the residential coding space in itself is still just a very new industry, right? In infancy stage. You look at HVAC, plumbing, electrical. I mean, those guys went through their, I guess, revolution back in the 80s and 90s, right? I mean, they're just very professional companies. They have best practice groups. Like, there's a lot of resources for them. Painters have kind of gone through that. Roofers have gone through that. The coating industry is still just like very barbaric in how we do things, right? There's no like real clear map of how to grow, of how to scale, of how to operate, right? Which creates a lot of opportunities for me, right? if people are experiencing these things and they're not able to push past those, that creates opportunities for me to be able to push through those things, right? So yeah, it's a new industry. 20 years ago, somebody probably would want to get this floor to, because they don't want their porch touching the concrete, right? Nowadays, these middle class people everywhere are getting these floors to protect their garage. The neighbor down the street got it. It's probably more affordable now than it was back then. So
Let me ask you something here about your mindset, because I want to dial in on that for a second. Specifically the goal setting first, because I love goal setting. I'm always trying to dial it in, get better. How do you think about setting a stretch yet attainable goal, and how do you not diminish that goal over time when the process becomes harder than you expected it to be? How do you not move that bar?
Yeah. So we had that. So our second year, we had kind of that experience. During that 1 million year mark, we had that experience where, the financial stuff happened in July, and at this point, we were nowhere near our sights of hitting that goal. That following month, it got worse. So here we are in August. And things are progressively getting worse and worse and worse. There was quality issues on our ends that started happening, and then right about the same time we had a bad batch of products. So we have this backlog of callbacks, and at this point we're scheduled out 6 days a week, every single day. So there's just like no room in the calendar everywhere. It's just like everything has to go perfectly. And I remember sitting, I show up to a job site, something was wrong with it.
Mm-hmm.
I show up to a job site, I take a look at it, something's wrong with it. Okay, so now it's like, all right, I got to find a place to be able to come back here and fix this. I get in my truck and I get a phone call. The same issue on this floor happened with another floor. And I put my phone down and I'm trying to catch my breath. I get another phone call literally 10 minutes later. Same thing happened with another project. 4 projects on top of this particular one, and then we have a backlog of just like callbacks to begin with. And that was my, what do I do? Like, do we stop this? What do we do here? And I sat there probably for half an hour trying to decide if it was worth going forward or not. At this point, we needed just a complete e-break, stop, get everything together. And ultimately decided to power through it. I don't know why or how, we just, right there and then I decided we were just going to power through this. We were able to clean up everything, all the backlog stuff, and we went on to have a seamless rest of the fall to barely hit a goal. And at that point in time, it was literally just a decision. That's all it was. This is going to be hard. This is going to suck. We're just going to do it. And luckily, it didn't cost me, other people's well-being. And that was another tough decision too, because at this point people are getting burnt out. They're not having a good time with this, right? And I'm creating an environment that I left. I left that environment at CDI, and now I'm creating it again for other people, right? So now I'm weighing that, and it was a hard decision, but we just went for it. Luckily, people stuck through it. Our core people, Micah, Noah, and then Dylan, who was our third hire. We have some core people that are, very, very bought into the success of the company. They have, they've taken their ownership of, their respective roles in the company. They were there. They powered through it with us. I don't know.
I think that's the answer, bro. You just decide. You just decide on what you want. You power through. When it gets tough, you don't compromise.
Yeah.
That's what I'm picking up from you.
Yeah. And there was there was a quote in a book that I read. It was, I think it was on F Yourself. I don't know if you.
Oh yeah.
There was one takeaway from that book. He talks about how everybody makes goals, but they don't write down what they're willing to sacrifice. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that always stuck with me. Like, if we want this, like, what am I willing to sacrifice?
Yeah.
Right. And it's a decision. Like, am I willing to sacrifice it all, or am I willing to sacrifice a little bit of it? You know. And
that's good. Damn, that's good.
Yeah. Like, what do you want, and then what are you willing to sacrifice to get it? Right. And then, you know, one thing that I guess I need to mention is, like, you know, my partner at home, right? Taylor, like, she understands and she believes, you know, at that time she understood and believed what, you know, I wanted to accomplish, what I wanted to achieve. She was fully supportive of that. Was I a good partner at the time? No. You know, did I come home at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, nights, eat and go to bed? Yes. Like, did she have to, you know, do everything at home? Like, so I had, you know, like, I didn't have to worry about, hey, my sacrifice, my relationship at home. You know, we don't have kids. Like, I didn't have to worry about that. Like, I was able to just, what I was sacrificing was time, energy, and just, like, sanity, right? Those are the things that I can sacrifice, and I did, right? If it was any different, you know, I don't know the outcome of that. Maybe we would just not hit our goal and everything would burn just fine. You know, that's realistically what would have happened. But yeah.
Hey man, as we wrap things up here, I'm like, this could be a Joe Rogan, man. This could be 4 hours, but because I know you got so much life experience, and I'm like, man, I want to know about the sales system. I want to know about, like, just marketing and all these, like, tactical things. But I think this episode has been incredible about your story and getting to know the heart, the soul, the perseverance required to make it, and the battle and the mind shift. I think is so incredible. It's so damn inspiring, bro. And your story is so freaking powerful, and I love that your heart is that you want to go back and help how you can help. And that just seems such, like, so redemptive. And like, where does this is kind of like the last question ish, your mindset now, your spirit, your zest for life. When I see you, there's a smile on your face, bro. And I knew you when you were doing that $1 million year, and I didn't feel that stress from you. I felt positivity. I just felt like when I left your presence, I was like, yeah, bro, like, let's get it. You know, that's how I felt. What sustains you these days? What powers you? Where's your mind at these days? You've gone through so much, and it feels like it's a night and day difference. Like, I know there's probably some things that are still a wrestle. I don't know, but I wish I had a more poignant question here, but I'm just trying to get inside, like, what's your thought process now? Or like, are there practices that you maintain? Is there mantras? Is there scriptures? Like, how do you maintain this and not fall back into, ways of the past?
Yeah. The company, like, today and moving forward, we have finally hit that point where it's not just me, right? We have people that are taking over management, we have people taking over production, we have people taking over sales, right? We have everybody involved in it, right? My responsibilities, like, today is just focus on growth, right? So I have all these people involved that have all taken ownership in their respective roles, right? So now I can rely on them. It's not all me anymore, right? Now I'm like excited, dude. I'm ecstatic about what we can do, right? It's not my limitation anymore, right? The first couple of years of starting a business, it's like literally what the owner can handle, right? Now it's like we've got this team, like it's up to them, right? I'll just set the pace. I set where we need to go, and my responsibility now is just like encourage them to do those things, right? So I'm ecstatic. I'm super happy. We still have our day-to-day challenges, but like it's fun now. Like now I'm enjoying it, right? It makes sense. Like, so I guess the thing that keeps me going is, at one point it was like making promises to people to say, hey, just put your time in, let's do this thing. Like you guys will have an opportunity here. Like at one point it was just an idea, right? Now it's like coming to fruition, right? People are taking on new responsibilities, helping on a day-to-day basis with the company. Like that's what drives me, right? The CDI idea that people can come in, they can grow, they can physically grow the company.
Yeah. It's amazing how you once dreamed of just having a job and having normal routine, and now like you're still dreaming, but the dreams just keep getting bigger, and more people can now come under your dream.
Yeah.
And it blesses more people. Man, Alosha, thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing your story. That man, it was just powerful. This is gonna help a lot of people, whether they have a similar background with addiction or not, whether they have a dream like yours to go forward and keep building a $10 million, $20, $100 million company. Like the universal is found in the particular, and you got so particular and so vulnerable and honest, and I just respect the shit out of that, man. So thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity, man. I think you're doing something super, super awesome. And I think going forward, if I never get my 5 minutes of fame, the one thing that I can claim is that I've been on a podcast, the same podcast as Chuck Toki and Antonelli, dude. Like, that's how I'm going to introduce myself. You know what I mean? Like, I've been on the same podcast.
Right on,
That's
man.
sick.
All right, brother.
Thanks, man.